Alright, I just recently took a trip to a hamfest up in North Carolina, about 3 hours away from where I'm at. Ran across a couple of radios, and this is one of them. Guess we'll get back to the estate sale ones after I get through this batch. But here is a Zenith, and this is a model R515 Zenith AM clock, tube clock radio from about 1954. And these things are better well known in the radio collecting community as owl eyes because of the two eyes over here, I guess you want to call it, and this, I guess, is supposed to be the beak or something, I don't know, but a lot of people nicknamed them owl eyes. So this is a pretty popular collectible set, although this is the most common color they came in, was brown. A lot of them, I think they made them in white and black too. But anyway, this radio is in pretty good shape, except for a crack under the bottom of it. The back is a little torn up. It's all the holes, the mounting holes are all pretty much gone, and but the top of the case is really nice. It's the bottom of the case is where the crack is at. I'm gonna try to attempt to repair this. You know, I mean, it's already cracked. You might, you know, you're not gonna devalue it any more than it already is. But well, I had an opportunity to get these sets at a pretty good price, and I paid $45 for all four of them. So that equals to be about $11.25 a set. So anyway, here they are. So we're going to go through them and see what all is going on with them. This set here, the power cord on it was kind of deteriorated, but it was taped together with another power cord that was, it was taped, you know, and the power cord that was taped to this part was the part that was deteriorating. This section of the power cord looked pretty good, so I just untaped it, and it was twisted together, and I just cut that off and put the plug. This is one of those plugs that you can just kind of stick the wire through and push it down and it locks in or whatever. I took this plug off of the other end of that power cord and put it back on the original section that was in good shape, so we'll just leave it that way. It should be good enough. But anyway, this has a Telecron movement, and as far as I can tell, it works just fine. This set was in pretty good shape. Cosmetically, it looks like it's in pretty good shape, and with the exception of that crack under the bottom of it, which I did bring up to the seller and use that as a tool to talk them down a little bit. I think the lady told me she wanted something like $60 for all four sets, and we ended up settling down at $45. I talked them down a little bit, but so that was quite a good buy, and I look forward to, you know, adding some of these to my collection and having fun repairing them. So anyway, let's see what's going on with this set.
David Duke announced his Senate candidacy, claiming your agenda for his own.
Well, it seems like it plays just fine. It sounds pretty good.
Gingrich said every Republican should repudiate it.
Should teenagers serve as volunteers in the church nursery? Stay tuned for the answer.
If Duke has some legal advice you'll want to put into practice, here he is with today's Legal Alert.
The children's ministry of a church in Ohio was...
I think that must be just doubling. I don't know.
Christian Law Association.
Like on numerous occasions over the years. Just to put it clear, I disavowed him.
I think I got rid of my AM source of interference that I kept picking up. It was a power supply that I had in the house that had some bad caps, and I changed it, and then I guess some caps weren't no good, because now it's emitting it's emitting all kind of interference on the AM broadcast band. Ended up turning it off last night and finding out that was the source of the interference over here, so glad to get that done. So I guess I'm gonna have to order some better caps. I thought those were new and good caps, but apparently it must have been some that were sitting around on the shelf for a while, because they ain't doing the job. Alright, well, this thing seems to play pretty good. Seems to play pretty normal. I don't hear any, you know, buzzing or anything like that in it. So, but I do want to take it out and see what all we're working with, and see if we got a bunch of old caps in there, or you know, what all has been done to this set. All right, and here's the chassis. Looks like a normal 5-tube radio chassis with 2 IF stages, and a fine layer of a pretty good big layer of dust, I should say. Looks like we got plenty of it in here, everywhere, all inside. And there's the clock mechanism and the speaker. But anyway, up under the chassis, it looks like we have mostly all original or at least or older replacement caps, I should say. This one looks like an older replacement here. It's even got some electrical tape taped on the side of it, which all this stuff will need to go. And looks like some, what I like to call, somewhat hacky repair work in here. And you've got this strand of wire here that's linking this cap over here to this big old blob of solder, and then you got some electrical tape over here, which looks like it puts the lead over here to this tube socket over here, which, you know, is just a kind of a hacked up job, sloppy repair work. So this cord here looks like it could be a little bit better shape, but we got this capacitor here. It looks, you know, just a few paper caps, and the rest of them look like disc, so those will probably be okay, more than likely. We'll just have to get some of these paper caps changed and get some of this mess cleaned up in here. It looks like we got more examples of sloppy soldering right here on this wire going to this back cassette antenna, and 2 big old blobs of solder. And it almost looks like, looking at this, that they had a soldering iron that didn't heat up hot enough and melt this solder uniformly. It looks like they were probably using too low of a wattage of a soldering iron when they were doing that. So we'll need to clean all that up and make that look a little bit better. I guess I'm not the world's best solderer, but you know, this stuff right here just ain't gonna cut it. Alright, so I got some of the components on this thing replaced, and I cleaned up some of these solder joints that were all, I mean, this whole thing from here to here was all filled up with solder, and so I cleaned a lot of that mess up. And This looks a little blobby, but it's 10 times better than what it was. And I'm still working on replacing some of the capacitors in here. I think I'm just going to replace this tubular one here, although this is a replacement. It's very odd that, you know, to be honest, I don't really, this capacitor here doesn't stick out on the schematic to me, but I believe it's in there. It's just in an odd configuration in the schematic, but anyway, it's in the circuit, I believe. Anyway, this was a replacement. It's a paper capacitor, but it's Stromberg-Carlson, so it's definitely not original. Stromberg-Carlson capacitor and a Zenith radio. And this power cord is deteriorated inside here where somebody's taped it off, so what I think I'll do is pull that through a little bit more and cut it off and put it back in there, because the rest of it, I'm just gonna pull it up a little bit, trim off the bad part, and then resolder it, because the rest of the cord is in fine shape. And we'll just do it that way. It'll be a little easier and all that. So some resistors replaced some of these resistors in the audio circuit. I still got to go through and check the rest of them, but yeah, just wanted to report in, so to speak, and show what I've done. I've replaced the filter caps. I got a 22 microfarad and a 47 microfarad for the 80 microfarad side, and then we've got a 47 here for the 40 microfarad side. So that's where we're at so far. This internal can capacitor here was reading really high. It was like 130 and 120 microfarad, and they're supposed to be 40 and 80, so I knew that was going out, so I just went ahead and replaced it. Okay, so I take back what I said about replacing the power cord. I did end up replacing the power cord with another power cord. This one's actually a little bit thicker than the one that was in there, but it went in just fine. But I did this because the other power cord, I went to, I unsoldered it from the tube, from the rectifier tube socket, and cut off the bad part, and then went to go strip it, and it was all corroded and green on the inside of it. So I figured, well, this thing's about had it. I ain't gonna put that back on with the wires internally corroded. That's not going to make for a very good power transfer, so I went ahead and junked that cord and put another cord on it. So we have an old replacement cord that's in decent shape that has its original plug on the end of it, so there won't be no issues with that, and it'll still be kind of a period correct cord. So anyway, well, I ended up replacing over probably half the resistors in this thing. There were a lot of them that were up in value, and we went ahead and changed those and replaced the filter caps and everything else I said previous. Got all of our caps changed and our resistors changed, and everything seems to be working pretty good. So I guess the next thing to do is to put this thing back together and go from there. Alright, I got the radio pretty much ready to go back in the cabinet. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it before I do this and let these tubes cool down a little bit. I was just checking it to make sure everything was in working order. Everything seems to be fine, so I'm gonna check some of these tubes and see what kind of condition they're in. Alright, I figured I'd check our tubes on this thing, and we got our 12 BE6, which is our RF amp in here. Got it all warmed up. We're going to check it out. Looks like it's coming in at about 62. And our 12 BA6 coming in at about 61, 62. Alright, this is the 12AT6, which is a little bit different number than what these things normally run. This is the detector and first audio driver tube. Yeah, I've got it hooked up and warmed up, and it's coming in kind of weak, about 50%. Now I went ahead and looked this thing up in my substitute book, and it says that as a substitution you can use a 12 AB6, and so I've got a few 12 AB6 tubes over here, so I'm going to use that as a temporary substitute until I can find another AT6. Alright, and we have this 12 AT6 over here, which, you know, actually all the settings here are the same except for this D control here, which has to go up a little more, so this tube may not have quite as much gain, but it's definitely a whole lot stronger than what I had in there. That's coming in about 82 or so, so that's pretty good for this tester. We've got our 35W4 rectifier tube. Oh, coming in about 67, 65, 60, yeah, 65, about 65, not bad. Alright, and finally our 50C5 audio output tube. Coming in close to 70, so that's still plenty good.
He accuses North Korea of needlessly and recklessly putting millions of people at risk, including its own citizens, he says, who are already suffering drought, hunger, and human rights violations. A Utah hospital where a nurse was arrested after refusing...
All right, well, we got it playing pretty good.
Has implemented a new
Sounds
policy.
pretty good.
The University of Utah Hospital says it's put a new policy in place after video of...
Got it cleaned up a little bit. Got, you know, of course, the inside cleaned up a little bit. And I need to get up here and polish the top of it a little bit, but not too bad.
The folks down...
Don't have any DX rolling in. Ain't quite that late yet. Just weak stuff from around the local area. Not many of our AM stations are very high power stations, so that's the reason why I don't get very many, just the ones around me.
They fed.
That one's pretty choppy in there. But it is working.
Equal housing lender.
Let Drayton investigate.
This is just a local talk radio station on 1240. So anyway, yeah, that hopefully that'll about do it. We got it playing good, and it should be good for a long time. So thanks for watching. That's my little Zenith. What is it? R515. And I know there's a model out there that's L515. It's got the same chassis in it, but this one's actually marked R515. Haven't been able to find anything on a R515. Mostly just an L515. And I've heard Zenith carried model numbers over to the next year, so it could have been just a date thing, and it could be the exact same radio. I know it has the same chassis number in it, which is a, what is it, a 5L06, I believe is the chassis number on this one. But anyway, it's playing again, and hopefully for a lot longer. Thanks for watching. Alright, just when you think you got something done, I started playing this thing, and after it gets good and hot, it starts distorting. So I've flipped it off, and it's been off a little while, so I'm going to have to let it warm up and get real hot. But once this set starts getting real hot, it starts distorting. The audio's distorting, and we got a good inclination that it's a bad tube somewhere. Some tubes going flaky, even though they just tested, most all of them just tested just fine. And so I think we got an issue with the tube here, so we'll have to let it get good and warm, and I'll report back.
A year later, our faith was tested.
Well, this is how it plays cold.
And the horse reared up and came back over on her. We rushed her to the hospital. First, the doctor ordered a brain test, and we prayed. Then he put the brain test on hold. He doesn't think she needs it.
It's a little bit
all right,
different.
here it is. It's distorting.
Augustine right now for something, and I was looking out over the beach last night, the moon. I was going, I wonder what this is going to look like in 5 or 6 days, because
well, it's scheduled to hit that area about Monday at 8 a.m. by my track, the Hannity track.
Sounds like crap, but yeah, I've got a flaky tube. Now I got to figure out which one it is. Alright, this thing's been playing about a half an hour, and
722-3166, or visit us online at LoneStarTransfer.com.
sounds fine now.
Let's get you out of your timeshare now.
I'm gonna let it keep playing for a while and check and see if it's okay, but looks like we had a flaky 12 BE6 tube.
Helping make those you love feel special and cared for is what we're all about at Galloway and Mosley Jewelers.
But anyway, I believe we've got our problem solved. That just goes to show you that if a tube tests good, it ain't always good. This thing tests just fine on this tester, and of course this is not the most advanced tester, I do realize that, but I've gone through everything and I have no shorts, and I've got good emissions on this thing. I had no reason to believe it was flaky, but it was. And so just be aware those distortion problems are not always capacitors. Everybody's got this idea they can replace the capacitors and everything's just fine. Well, it's not always just fine. Some of this stuff unfortunately requires experience, and just well, all I did was just swap out tubes. You go through and just weed them out until you find out your problem. I mean, I know the circuitry was in good shape. I just went through all that, and everything was fine. So I knew it had to be most likely tube related. And I do want to also add that we repaired this crack with some. We repaired it with some epoxy. And I got super glue in the crack and got it back together, and then I put this coating of epoxy over the top of it, and it seems to be holding pretty good. I'm glad that crack's only on the bottom. Everything else is in pretty good shape. So
Equipment and services.
all right, thanks for watching.
Fully certified